Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 18th, 2025 meeting of the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees. The meeting is being held in person with committee members participating remotely. This time, Board Secretary Michelle Carreri will conduct a roll call attendance to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called.
Robbie Luna,
Present via WebEx.
Matthew Lenz,
Present via WebEx.
Joseph Formicola,
Present via WebEx.
David Moderano,
Present via WebEx.
Ryan Estes,
Present via WebEx.
David Caprio, Michael Gray, Mark Parlan.
Present via WebEx.
Also in attendance is Chair Margot Cook. Is Armand here? I don't see Armand. He may be here. I don't see him. Sorry. Okay, we have a quorum.
Just a reminder to all members, for the benefit of our audience and the note taker, please clearly identify yourself whenever you comment, make a motion, or second to a motion. Participants using WebEx are required to keep their cameras on as remote members, and all persons present at the meeting location must be clearly audible and visible to each other. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional stomping ground of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. I'd also like to welcome Ryan Estes to his first meeting of the committee. Ryan, welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Are there any proposed amendments to the published agenda? There being none, the first order of business is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 4th, 2025 meeting?
So moved, Joe Formicola. Second, David Moderano.
Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
No, any opposed or abstentions? The motion to approve the minutes of the February 4th, 2025 committee meeting is approved. The next order of business is agenda item 2, which is a discussion item, which will be a review of the external audit plan. I'll have Abby Benson lead us.
Great, thank you. I'm really just here to introduce Mike Johns from our external auditing firm, CLA. So I think the committee is familiar with Mike. He's been here in the past to give an update on the plan for our annual audit. He works very closely with our AVP for Financial Operations and Controller Angela Miller, who's also on the call. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to just give you a preview of our audit. Mike?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully you can see a PowerPoint presentation. What we're doing here today is really kicking off the audit process for the fiscal year that will end June 30, 2025. And there's some required communications that I need to review with governance and just also give some highlights of the overall audit plan and some industry insights as we conclude our presentation. If you have any questions as I'm moving through the presentation, I'd be more than happy to address them, but please just yell. I probably won't see if you wave your hand, so just yell and I'll pause and be happy to address any questions anyone may have. So what was CLA engaged to do? We're engaged to express an opinion on the university's financial statements for the period I had mentioned. Those financial statements and the related internal controls to ensure that they are fairly presented are the responsibility of management. Our responsibility is to come in after the books are closed, perform various tests and procedures so that we can express an opinion on the reasonableness of those financial statements. We're required to perform our audits in accordance with our professional standards, which also includes government auditing standards because of the federal grants that the university receives. At the end of our audit procedures, when we're meeting with this group, again, we're required to issue a formal letter of some more governance communications stating how the audit went, And if we identify any deficiencies in the internal control structure, we're also required to put those in writing if they're considered to be a material weakness in the internal control structure or a significant deficiency in the internal control structure. A material weakness in the auditing standards is defined as a control that's either non-existent or not operating appropriately to prevent a material error from occurring in the university's financial statements. I should mention, though, that we do not express an opinion on the internal controls. We gain an understanding of them. In some cases, we test them to help us plan our substantive procedures, but an expression of an opinion on the internal control structure does not occur during a financial statement audit. We're also engaged to perform the single audit, which is the audit of the university's major federal program or programs, depending on how many there are. And that's really your compliance audit. And most years, it's a rotation between the student financial aid cluster and the research and development cluster. Brief overview of the time frame. Really, the audit kicks off today. We have had meetings with management discussing the logistics, the timing, new accounting pronouncements, and other items. But our preliminary procedures happen this month and next month. Those procedures include things such as getting the confirmations sent out, getting an understanding of anything new at the university, any new transactions that would materially impact your financial statements, getting an understanding of any changes in personnel or related internal controls. Then we stop and perform our risk assessment and come back in August and into September is the nuts and bolts of the audit, where we perform what we call our substantive procedures when we're looking at invoices, when we're reconciling the books and records to confirmations we received, when we're reviewing management's estimates. So what most people think of as part of the normal audit process. The financial statements are due to the state at the end of September, beginning of October, so they can be included in the state's financial statements. I mentioned before that we're required to communicate with governance at the end of the audit. However, if we come across anything that we consider to be significant, either in terms of what we're seeing, any errors we've identified, any significant changes that appear unusual, we would be sure to reach out to the chair as the audit progresses immediately and let him know what we are seeing. The risk-based audit approach, after we perform our planning procedures, our standards require that we take a step back and assess risk as to if something were going to go wrong, either due to a fraud occurring or an error in the application of the accounting standards, where is it more likely that it would occur? And we then produce our procedures to spend more time where we see a higher risk of material misstatement and less time where we see less risk of material misstatement. Some areas to highlight, internal controls. I mentioned we usually test internal controls over the cash disbursement cycle, both payroll and general disbursements. We also look at each significant cycle and at least do a walkthrough to make sure that the controls are working as they are designed and are properly implemented. We also bring in IT specialists who look at the general computer controls surrounding data security and things along those lines, those frontline defense type controls in the IT environment as they relate to the financial statements. The pension and other post-employment benefits are significant liabilities at the university, and we perform procedures to make sure they were calculated appropriately, agree to the actuarial report produced by the state, and test some of the census data that was sent over to the state to be able to calculate that liability. We search for unrecorded liabilities. We look at general disbursements occurring through the year and after year end to make sure they're recorded in the proper period. Revenue recognition is always considered a significant risk. Is revenue reported in the right year? Is it properly cut off at year end? And that would be both on the student cycle and the grant cycles and appropriation cycles. So we do consider revenue recognition to be one of those higher risk areas and design our audit procedures appropriately, focusing on revenue. We also look at the related receivables and making sure that they were properly recorded and again were appropriate to record at year end. Payroll expense is one of the larger expense items at the university, and we perform various procedures over making sure that the payroll registers reconcile to the financial statements and various analytics and looking at various HR files. And then just liabilities in total, making sure that there's no contingent liabilities that we need to be aware of and consider recording at year end, and making sure that the liabilities are complete and accurate. So that there's obviously other areas we look at, such as capital assets and so on, but these were just some of the higher risk areas that we wanted to review today. Your financial statements do include 2 component units that are discretely presented, and what that means is they are shown separately from the financial statements of the university. And those financial statements are audited by other auditors who are engaged by those component units to perform their annual audit. We perform some high-level procedures, making sure that we're in accordance with professional standards, such as reviewing the statements they produce, having a conversation, sending correspondence to the other auditors. However, the opinion on those component units is 100% that of the component auditors and not that of CLA. The single audit's a little different for the university in that CLA does not determine the major programs. A major program is a federal program that's selected for testing based on risk criteria, significance, and other factors. The state lets CLA know what federal programs it considers to be major, and that's because the university's federal programs are included in the state's reporting to the federal government. So at this point, we don't know which programs, if any, will be selected, but when we will work closely with the state audit group and make sure that we have plenty of time to address their requests. And those audits are due after the basic financial statement audit, generally in the December, January timeframe. There's a new accounting standard this year. I won't bore everyone going over the technical matters of it, but management does have a little bit of homework to do in looking at compensated absence liabilities. So that's liabilities for sick time or PTO time or vacation time. They changed the standard, and really what this impacts in the higher education industry is that sick time that's not required to be paid out when an employee leaves the university. So then analysis has to be done in the sick time, looking at the sick bank at year end, what an employee's earned and not used, and what is the probability that they will take that time at a future date. And if it's considered more likely than not they will, then a liability needs to be recorded, where in the past, under the old rules, a liability would not have to have been recorded in that circumstance. So I know management's taking a look at the impact of that standard, and we'll work with them. And if it is material, it would be a retroactive restatement to the beginning net position or equity of the university. Sure, a lot of this is front of mind for a lot of people on the call, that just there's a lot of uncertainty in the higher education industry right now. A few months ago, maybe more than a few months ago now, Moody's gives an annual outlook on the higher education industry, and they changed their outlook from a stable outlook to that of a negative outlook, and they really stated 6 reasons for the change. They're listed on this slide, but a lot of it has to do with the regulations coming from Washington and some of the news coming from Washington. The 15% cap on the indirect cost rate, if that goes through, would obviously have a negative impact on grant funding. The disruption that could or could not be incurred based on the employment cuts at the Department of Education. The proposed endowment tax, although that wouldn't impact URI, but definitely the industry. There's just federal funding cuts in total, with certain grants that seem to be being discontinued.
So we're doing the right thing, even it's a lot of work.
Sorry, I thought I heard someone ask a question, but I think someone just needs to go on mute. The international student focus, and will we be able to admit as many international students? And then the one criteria Moody's pointed to that was not related to regulatory changes is just macroeconomic conditions. And, they see volatility in not only the investment markets, but potentially in rising expenses throughout the United States. So that's why Moody's changed their outlook. I know when I talk to management and boards across the country, there's a lot of focus on next year's budget and, stress testing it to see what it looks like if some of these regulatory changes do come through. As it relates to student financial aid, for those of you who don't get your hands into the details, it is a very complex federal program. There's a book of compliance put out by the Department of Education that's 9 chapters long, and it's a very complex set of regulations. So the concern in the industry is who's going to be administering this in the future from Washington, and will the folks who have to run these programs on campus have the resources they need when a question comes up? Will they have those resources that they're able to reach out to make sure appropriate compliance? And then the enrollment cliff, in certain areas of the country, there being less high school graduates, is something else that a lot of folks are just keeping an eye on how that impacts their tuition revenue. During this call, we're required to just ask governance if there's anything they see during the course of the year or currently that they feel there's a risk as it relates to the audit and would like CLA to take a little closer look at. That could be financial reports you're receiving or new transactions you've been working with management on. And also if there's awareness of any significant fraud occurring. So we always ask these questions during this meeting. If no one has a response right now, we will be reaching out to the chair in a separate private conversation to ask more specific questions. But we just want to give the opportunity at this point, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, we'd love to hear them. And my contact information is at the end of this presentation. So if you would like to reach out to me and set up a separate meeting or separate call, always happy to do that as well. Those are the end of my, I'm sorry.
Oh, nothing, sorry.
Those were the end of my formal remarks. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
The second discussion item is the annual update on cybersecurity. Abby and Gabriel, please.
Great, thanks. So this is, as you mentioned, Chair Luna, the annual update on cybersecurity. So Gabriel will give us an update on some of the initiatives in cybersecurity, some responses to the management observations from CLA during prior audits, and just some improvements we've made in cybersecurity. So I'll turn it over to Gabriel to walk through the deck.
Thank you. So luckily this time around we have some good news. And I don't know who's advancing the slides, but if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So these are the major bullet items. We've made significant progress in critical security domains. Our security posture is significantly better than it was a year ago. I think we have some celebratory notes coming a little bit later. Our security posture has increased with respect to certain security compliance standards. We continue to focus on resilience, governance, and scalable protections. And I'd like to also mention that this is the second year in a row, which it's not I don't want to give the impression to the committee that this is a strong indicator, but it is a light indicator that our cybersecurity is improving, because when we submit all the documentation to the Cybersecurity Insurance Agency, our premiums have gone down. This is the second year in a row that has been the case. So next slide, please. Some of the things that we're working on, current initiatives, we're unifying the IT policy. Currently, it's comprised of about 5 separate pieces that are a little complex, and that there were some definitions that weren't uniform across all policies. It's a relatively long and involved process because this time around we're involving the community as we go. We're highly optimistic that we're going to have a nice, solid policy. The major components of the first iteration of the policy is that although it's more comprehensive, it is both more explicit and concise. So it's a little less wordy, and it's a little easier for folks to follow. And this will be one of multiple iterations, probably the next one another year later, but right now, we're probably looking at several months out before we have the first draft finished. Business continuity and disaster recovery plan. The project has been initiated. Those of you who are aware previously, we had initiated it before we parted ways with the individual who was responsible for it. We have now reinitiated the business continuity disaster recovery plan. This is a very important part of IT resiliency and continuity. Obviously, when things go down in IT, it's a high risk for the university not to be able to do their business. And so having this in place and available to both the staff and those outside is an important component to cybersecurity. And I'd also like to mention that we're moving from Sherlock, which was a CMMC2 compliant environment. For those of you who are unaware, we do have some research that happens at URI that requires higher levels of security and secure compute environments. We're moving from Sherlock, which was provided by UCSD, to Hermathena, which is a private sector company that does this for the Department of Defense. It lowers our costs, increases our security a little bit as we do it. It is an ongoing project, but it's something that we're moving from point A to point B, and we have to maintain compliance during the transition. We hope this will be done within the next 90 days. Next slide, please. So this is one of the, I think, most important accomplishments over the past year. I know that we've talked about this before. I think the bottom line, what it means is the most important component. We rolled out single sign-on and multi-factor authentication for eCampus. It was the last remaining enterprise critical system that was not under multi-factor authentication and single sign-on. So we get to sign that off. It took a little bit longer than we anticipated. This is going to be a reoccurring theme, by the way. And as the Board of Trustees hears about progress toward Workday, we'll probably be seeing some of this as well. We do have the way things have been set up at URI is a little more idiosyncratic than you see in other places. And part of that resulted in much longer timelines with the vendor that we worked for to implement single sign-on than we originally anticipated, but it's done. We get to tie that up in a bow. Hopefully everybody here's experience was fairly transparent. If you used single sign-on now, you're logged in everywhere, and it's easy for you to go from point A to point B, but it's highly protected. Next slide, please. So to piggyback on the previous CLA audit summary, we are working with CLA to finish the IT component of it. There are just 2 remaining servers. We had about 67 when it first came out. The 2 remaining are with the URI Foundation. It is a little more complicated than we had hoped and anticipated because we have to interact with the URI Foundation. They lost their IT professional during this. We couldn't hold it off. The servers are as secure. We've kind of encapsulated them in security as much as possible already, but we need to move them to a fully secure infrastructure. We hope this will be done by October. By the way, feel free to ask questions as I go along. If there's anything that you'd like me to address while I go over these, but all other items in the CLA audit were addressed. Right. Next slide, please. These are just, metrics about how many things are actually being processed by the new systems that were put in place. So basically, this shouldn't surprise many of you who are in the field. The majority of email traffic that comes to our users is not legitimate email traffic. And so we have, out of 267 million emails, we have 115 million that were delivered. So the rest, the 57% of those were blocked. We have a list of why they were blocked, but I think it's important to know that as far as we can tell, the number of false positives is extraordinarily low. So we have approximately about 60 reports from people that items that were blocked should not have been blocked. That is a lower bound because we don't hear everything, but that is less than 1/10 of 1%, probably less than 1/100th of 1% of emails that come through are currently being blocked. False positives are important because that could potentially interfere with somebody's business. So these metrics are over the past 24 months, past 12 months. Next slide. Cybersecurity training, 95% of faculty and staff had a completion rate on time, which means that they didn't have, so if you didn't complete on time, you were locked out until you actually completed it. So more than 95%, slightly better than the previous years. Obviously, we would like to have 100% so nobody is locked out when the time comes. But I do think that that's a pretty good number. We also had a 50% drop in people. So we do these phishing attempts to gauge how well people are trained in responding to phishing attacks. There's a 50% drop in people clicking on phishing attack links. I think this is indicative of an improved penetrance in the training to the community. And phishing reporting increased 21%, which means that people who receive suspicious emails, there was a 21% increase in them using. So we added a button. I don't know if you're using the URI email within Google, you'll have a little button to report phishing emails. So there was a 21% increase or engagement, if you will, in the community reporting phishing emails. So basically, URI is more aware of cybersecurity. Unfortunately, so are the bad guys. They're doing some stuff that is a little bit more sophisticated using AI. We're tackling that. We think that we're doing better than our peers. So I have to say higher education tends not to be as robust as the private sector, but we feel like we're doing better than our peers right now. We're going to keep trying to do better. Robbie, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this is other metrics. 705 reported incidents handled by the security office. These are basically the tickets that come through. 50%, 54% were resolved within 24 hours. I believe, and Tanya, who's here on the call, can validate, but I believe that none of those were highly time sensitive that were not addressed within 24 hours. And we had 203 security impact reviews performed. So basically, when people are trying to purchase hardware, software, doing integrations, et cetera, what is the security impact of changes, those kinds of things. So 203 were performed over the past 12 months, and 194 vendors were reviewed for cybersecurity. There's a mechanism that's called HECVAT. You can look up online. That is a higher education, the HE part of that evaluation for vendors to determine their cybersecurity maturity. We've been doing that very regularly with all new vendors, whether they're software, hardware, or some mix of service, and we've done 194 last year. Next slide, please. These are the people who did all the work. I, of course, was the person sitting back and enjoying the credit, but these folks are the ones who did all the hard work. Next slide, please. Oh, is that it? I usually have questions to mark at the end. So if there are any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to ask here. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards for sidebars. Any questions?
Gabriel, I just have one. The alignment with CMMC, is that due to DoD programs that we're supporting?
Yeah, so NIUVT, which is the underwater vehicle program, which through the Navy, that's something that requires higher levels of security. So it's not. So it's basically a public trust level security. It's not higher levels of security, but the CMMC2 compliance requirements kick in. So it's sensitive, but not highly. We do have other higher security research that happens at URI, but that is air-gapped.
Okay.
This is allowing people to use the computational infrastructure available in the cloud to do their research in a very secure manner.
And is this self-audit, or is DoD actually sending auditors to check our compliance with these controls?
So I don't think we've had an audit since I've been here.
Okay.
We do self-audit, and we use, in this particular case, when we're moving to Hermathina, they actually do the additional audit, but it's still considered a self-audit. It's just slightly higher fidelity because it's the third-party vendor, and we also do the checklists. But obviously, if we do have a DoD security audit, those can be low touch or very high touch. And I certainly hope that we don't flag to the level where they come in and do a deep audit.
All right, thank you.
Tanya, do you have any comments to add to that? Have we
I do
had
not.
any audits? Have we had any audits since you've been here? Because you've been here much longer than I have.
I have. No, I have not been a part of any audits with the DoD.
Thank you for the question.
Any more questions? All right, thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a motion to enter into executive session to discuss two items. May I have a motion to convene into executive session pursuant to RI GL 42465A 7 as it relates to the question of investment of public funds where the premature disclosure would adversely affect the public interest, specifically update on Series 2018A and 2018B bonds audit, and RI GL 42465A2 regarding potential litigation.
David Monterano, so move.
Is there a second to the motion?
Matt Len, seconded.
Yeah. You're on mute, Joe. Yeah, I know. Just picked it up. That's okay.
Any discussion on motion? There being no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. The committee will now convene into executive session for the reasons specified. It's anticipated that the executive session will last approximately 20 minutes, after which the committee will reconvene in open session. The live stream will be paused during the executive session and will resume once the executive session is ended and the committee reconvenes in open session. For all those participating via WebEx, please confirm by saying yes that no other person is present and or able to hear the discussion at the remote location.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If you do not automatically move into the breakout session, join the session when prompted on your computer screen by clicking on the Join Now button. Attendees not participating in the executive session will be moved to the waiting room. Michelle?
We are back in open session. Thank you.
First order of business in open session is a motion to seal the executive session minutes. May I have a motion to seal the minutes of the committee's executive session?
So moved, Joe.
Is there a second to the motion?
David Monorano, second the motion.
Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed or abstentions? The motion is approved. The next order of business is agenda item 4, which is an action item. And this will be approval of amendments to the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee Charter and/or calendar and recommendation to the URI Board of Trustees. And I'll refer this to Abby Benson.
Hi, thank you. So we have just one change to the charter to the calendar for the committee, which is to add the review of the single audit and the NCAA agreed upon procedures. So this was discussed, I believe, back in January. That's the only change recommended right now to the committee charter or calendar.
Do we have a date in mind, Abby?
A date for when it's going to be reviewed?
Yeah.
Yes. Just trying to, I had it here. I think it's added to the January calendar.
Okay. All right. Thank you. May I have a motion to recommend approval of amendments to the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee calendar as presented in the enclosure?
Matt Len, so moved.
Is there a second to
David
the motion?
Monorano, second.
Any discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. The last item on the agenda is item 5, and that's adjourn. May I have a motion to adjourn?
David Monorano, so move.
Joe Formicola, second.
I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Yeah.
The motion to adjourn is approved. The next meeting is the Institutional Risk and Compliance Committee is scheduled for October 28th, 2025. Thank you, everyone.